Hey, just as a reminder, the horror app I'm partnered with, Chilling, is currently running an investment campaign for people who want to own a piece of the company. Chilling 2.0 is currently in development, and next year when it launches, in addition to the scary stories, Chilling will feature horror movies, shows, short horror films, and Chilling originals. Chilling is growing so fast, and now is the time for you to get in on the ground floor. I'll leave a link in the description so you can check it out and learn all about Chilling 2.0 and your opportunity. This happened several years ago. I happened to be driving in the city one night and was driving home afterwards. I lived about 40 minutes away from the city in a relatively quiet suburb. When I was driving back, I remember I had just left downtown and it was pretty late, almost midnight. I pulled up to a stoplight, which was red. As I was sitting there, I saw a car pull up beside mine and I could hear the loud engine. It sounded bad, like the car was going to break down at any moment. Because of this, it caused me to look over, and when I did, I saw the driver of the car was wearing a clown mask. He looked over at me, and then he pointed. It was kind of creepy with it being late at night and stuff, but I laughed it off. I smiled and waved at him, and a moment later, the light turned green, and he sped off in front of me. I drove home, mostly just taking this one long and busy highway that went all the way from the city, right near where my house was. At this time of night, the road was very quiet, and I didn't see many other cars at all. I was able to make it home faster than usual because of this. It was barely 30 minutes later when I had reached the exit of the highway that I would take to go home. But just before the exit, I noticed a car in front of me. It was the same car that the guy with the clown mask was in. I recognized it because of how old and beat up it was. He was turning at the same place where I would turn. I didn't even know he had still been on this road. He was driving slower now, and I caught up with him. My street was not all that long, and I hadn't seen this car before. I pulled onto the street behind him, and thankfully, he drove past my driveway and I pulled into it. I watched him keep driving down the street. I got out of my car and began to walk up to my house. As I had only made it a few feet away from my car though, I started to hear screeching down the road. I took a couple of steps back to look. Then, I watched as the car came roaring back down the street towards my house. I watched the car speed at an unusually fast pace down my street and pull right into my driveway. I scrambled to get inside and quickly got to my doorstep and unlocked the door. I heard the car come to a stop in my driveway and then the door open and slam shut. Finally, I was able to open my door and I got inside and locked it behind me. I didn't even want to look outside, but at the same time, I felt like I had to. I peeked out my living room window, hoping that I would not be visible from the outside. As I did, I watched the clown guy get out of his car and walk up to my front step. He then just stood there. He was just staring at my front door, about 10 feet away. I was frozen still, too afraid to move or let him out of my sight. I feared if I moved, he would see me, and I did not know if he currently knew where I was. I didn't think he did, because he never looked directly at me. He would occasionally look around, but never at me. This went on for almost 30 minutes. I considered calling the police, but again, was too afraid to move. Finally, at last, I watched him walk away slowly back to his car. He then got inside and drove away. I watched outside for another 5 minutes or so just in case he were to come back before I finally left the front window. I checked the window again probably 10 times before I finally went to bed that night. Thankfully, he never came back. I've always wondered who he was and if it was just a coincidence he drove to my street. After all, he was driving ahead of me on the highway most of the time. It still gives me the creeps to think about it though. This occurred several months ago. It was a cool spring night and I was fast asleep in my house. I'm a female and live with my husband. However, he was out of town for the weekend on business. I was suddenly woken up in the middle of the night, a little past 1 a.m. I had no idea what woke me, but I was suddenly wide awake. I sat up in bed and looked around the room. It was mostly dark as all the lights were off. Then my eyes wandered to the bedroom window. That's where I saw a clown face looking right at me. Not a guy with a clown mask, but a guy who had literally painted his face to look like a clown. And he did a pretty good job too. I immediately screamed. When I saw him, he quickly disappeared and ran away. He was now out of my sight, but I was terrified. I grabbed my phone and called my husband. Luckily, he answered. He told me to call the police. As I was still on the phone with him, I got up and walked over to the window and looked outside. The clown guy was gone by now, and I couldn't see him at all through the window. but as I was still looking around our front yard out the window, I heard the sound of glass breaking at the opposite end of the house. I got a terrible feeling. After hearing this, I ended my call with my husband to call the police. Then, I ran as fast as I could to my bedroom door and closed it and locked it. I then started to hear movement inside the house on the other end. This was followed by the sound of a man laughing hysterically. It was one of the creepiest moments ever. I was on the phone with the police telling them to please hurry. They said they would be there as fast as they could, and I stayed on the line with them. I heard the clown walking through the house and slowly getting closer. As he did, his creepy laugh continued. I was dreading the moment he would reach my bedroom door, and eventually he got to the hallway. I think he went to the other bedroom first, but then, about a minute later, I heard the footsteps reach the end of the hallway and go right outside the bedroom I was in. It was silent, and then I heard his creepy laugh right outside the door. I moved quietly as far away from the door as I could possibly get. Then, I saw the knob turn, and thankfully stop. The door was locked, and I then heard 3 calm knocks, followed by a quieter laugh. Then, things got quiet for a few seconds. I was holding my breath, and then he started banging on the door, seemingly as hard as he could. This guy had to be insane or something. I was told the police were within a minute away, and I was just hoping they would get there faster. The guy was banging on the door, and I didn't think it would last too long. Then, out of the window, I thought I finally saw the police lights. Sure enough, it was them, and the sound of a siren soon got louder and louder. The banging on the door stopped, and things got quiet again. The police were at the house a very short time later, and they were able to get inside, and I finally left the room. However, the clown man was gone. He had left out the back door and left it wide open. The police searched the area, but couldn't find him. The only thing found was his red rubber nose in our backyard. My husband got home the next day, thankfully, and the next time he went out of town, I went with him. It's been a few months, but I still get scared that the clown might come back sometime. I'm going to tell you a very strange experience I had that happened just last year. I worked at a grocery store then that was pretty close to my house. One night, I got off of work at 10 p.m., and on my way out of the store, I picked up some chicken and potato wedges that they had in the deli area. It was one of my favorite things to get at work when I got food there. It had been a long day of work, and I was starving, so hungry that I could hardly wait to eat. After I got the food and left the store, I walked through the now quiet parking lot to my car. I was parked at the far back of the parking lot, which is where I usually was. I got to my car, went inside, and began eating the chicken. It always tasted so good after work when I would be super hungry. I was just chowing down without a care in the world, and also on my phone, when out of nowhere I was interrupted by a knock coming from my passenger side window. I looked over and just about dropped everything when I saw a creepy looking clown looking right inside my window. It was probably the last thing I was expecting to see. I was quite creeped out by this. There was no chance I was going to lower the window or open the door. The clown just kept looking directly at me the entire time, staring. I noticed that the clown was holding several balloons in his hand. Whoever this was went to great lengths with the clown costume. If it was Halloween night or the middle of the day, I might have been entertained by this, but it was nowhere near Halloween, and it was after 10 o'clock at night. The clown had moved his head closer and closer, and his face was now pressed all the way up against my passenger side window. Then, he tried the door handle. Of course, it was locked, but after failing to get inside, he then banged on the window. I wasn't staying there any longer, and I put my car into reverse and backed up, then sped out of there. The clown watched me the entire time as I did. I just wanted to get away from him, and I didn't notice until I got home that he had tied a balloon on a string around my passenger side door handle. After I got out of my car, I removed it. I popped the balloon and was going to throw it away, but I then noticed something inside the now deflated balloon. I took it out to see it was like a folded up piece of paper. After unfolding it, I was shocked. It was a printed photo, and it looked like it was taken with the flash on at nighttime, and the picture was of my house. I have no clue who that guy dressed as a clown was, or why he did this to me. I didn't notice anything strange happening or anything like that. Nothing like this has happened since, either.